There's some times where, you might be in a situation where you're really not well liked, and maybe you've had a couple NJPs, and let's set up a scenario here. Say you've got a girlfriend that understands that she, because you've talked with her, and she knows that you can easily get in trouble, and so she wants to hold something against you, and she falsely accuses you or me or whoever this person to be. Say, listen, I know that your command thinks that you're a piece of crap. And so, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, I'm just going to go to them and I'm going to tell them that you've sexually assaulted and raped me. At that point, she's accused, she's threatening to do something. Should you get a lawyer at that time before she does anything? I mean, what's your best advice to, like, how do you move forward from a situation like that?
Well, I think there's a lot to unpack here. I mean, and the first thing is just the notion of the command can be after you or they hate you. That's real. And we get calls all the time and say, well, my commander hates me. And sometimes that's not true. So, well, maybe they hate you because you never show up for formation, you can't run 2 miles, and you're just a bad soldier in general, right? But there are other times when the command legitimately is out to get someone. And we've seen that where you have maybe a toxic command or toxic leadership or a toxic command climate where they are truly out to get a soldier or a sailor or oftentimes a Marine. And if that happens, you need to really put your guard up, because even the most basic allegations or allegations which may not have a lot of merit to them can really put you under the microscope. So just the notion that there are commands that are out to get people, that is true. And as much as we want to not believe that there's toxic culture out there, there certainly is. So that's the first piece of this. The second piece, if you have a significant other that's threatening you with crime or making allegations against you, the first thing you do is stop that relationship. That is probably the most toxic relationship you can possibly have. So beyond, the legal advice, let's just get the Dr. Phil advice out here. That's a relationship you don't want to be involved in. And you really got to look back and maybe do an AAR or a hot wash saying, well, how the hell did I get into this relationship to begin with? And let's look at some of the signs so it doesn't happen again. Because oftentimes, individuals who get in these relationships, they're repeat offenders. They get from one relationship to another, and there's always signs that are pretty obvious to see. So that's the second piece of it. The third piece of this is, if that does happen, do you need to get a lawyer? You need to really talk to one. And I think that if someone like that calls me and they say, hey, my girlfriend is saying they're going to accuse me of sexual assault because I've gotten 2 NJPs and they're pissed off for whatever the reason is, they really need to talk to a lawyer, and we can really unpack that and make a determination of, is this something you need to retain counsel on or not? And that doesn't necessarily even need to be a civilian lawyer. It can be, but at a minimum, you should be going and talking to the Trial Defense Service or the Defense Service Office. You need to talk to someone you have an attorney-client relationship with to get some advice, because you're really in a high-risk scenario at this point in time. The second thing I would say is, everything we do in life now is done on the phone, right? So we don't have conversations anymore. What do? We do everything on the iPhone or on text messages, right? Even as I speak, I've got text messages, people there waiting for me to answer. If this is going to happen, where you have a significant other or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it happens to be, make these allegations, you need to preserve all of the communications with him or her. And that needs to happen very, very quickly. If that's just a matter of screenshotting everything, because typically that there'll be discussions on this that the two of you will have, or there will be, you want to know about the history of the relationship to see that this is a complete BS allegation. Something like that, your cell phones may be your best ally or the best evidence. You don't necessarily need to go have it forensically done, but at a minimum, you want to preserve everything you have with this individual as far back as you can go, whether it's embarrassing or not, because that may be very, very important. So, and then obviously put your guard up, walk away from that situation and make sure, because if she's going to threaten to falsely accuse you, I mean, who knows what's going to happen next? He or she may always try to have leverage over you. So number one, commands can be toxic. Number two, this happens more than you think. Talk to a lawyer, whether that's a civilian attorney or a free attorney, and at a minimum, start preserving all of the communications you have with him or her, because they may be incredibly important. And just the way Murphy's Law works is, you may forget to do that, and all of a sudden you drop your phone, or your phone gets run over or breaks. Make sure when you're preserving that, you put it on another device. So if you lose your phone or break your phone, you don't lose potentially all of the evidence that was, we may need down the road.
We've seen this kind of play out in the civilian world. I mean, just recently, the Johnny Depp trial, right, has gone out, and obviously this is not, he's not being he's not facing court martial or very serious charges. That was that was more of a civil thing. But you could see how things were presented in a in a way being accused, which can be taken very seriously.
Yeah, we see that a lot. There are oftentimes ulterior motives here, and in the civil world, whether it's a football player or a very well-known quarterback, which I won't name, but who has a lot of allegations made against him. A lot of it's money driven, it's fame driven. There are ulterior motives, so people use sexual assault as really a sword, which is incredibly problematic because I've said it many times. Sexual assault clearly happens, and it is an egregious crime that I think that all organizations, from the military, across the spectrum, should be stamping out. We can't tolerate that. But what's happened is there are so many false and BS allegations now that are out there. And we see this again, the Johnny Depp. We see it against ball players. We see it against military members. And while military members, your Lance Corporal, may not be a seven-figure target for monetary compensation, in the military they incentivize making these allegations. As I've said before, they can get expedited transfers to the base of their own choosing. They can then get diagnosed with the MTRS, which is military rape trauma syndrome, and get a disability rating. And if you leave with a 100% or an 80% disability rating because you claim to have been sexually assaulted, it's like hitting the Florida Lotto at some level. And that's not for people that actually were sexually assaulted. That resource is there, but it's clearly, from what I see, abused. And people will make a false allegation. That way they can get this allegation into their records, and then they can claim a disability. And now they're getting compensation for the rest of their life when someone else maybe headed to prison falsely for something they didn't do. And that's where we really come in. And those are the types of cases I really want to take on. Someone that's been falsely accused of an offense, in particular a sexual assault offense, where we know they didn't do anything wrong, or if they did something wrong, it was bad judgment, but not criminal. Maybe drinking too much, maybe by going out with the wrong individual, but not something that's criminal, where we want to ensure that they're not falsely imprisoned. And we want to hold these other people accountable. We want to hold these people that falsely accuse, whether you're a man or a woman or whatever rank you are. If you're going to falsely accuse another service member, you need to be held accountable. And we're going to do everything within our power to make sure that they are held accountable.